bosses don't talk, we just sit back and listen. Then make boss moves. She like to argue, so I sent that bitch to law school.
On March 31st, 2025, officers with the Wilson Police Department responded to a 911 call reporting gunfire at a residence on Snowden Drive. Inside the home, they found the lifeless bodies of 50-year-old Dana Jenkins and her 15-year-old son, Darren Cox. Both had suffered fatal wounds. The alleged killer was not a stranger nor a random intruder. It was Dana's oldest son, 25-year-old Dana Jenkins, who had moved back into home just 6 days earlier after being released from state prison. Jenkins had served more than 5 years behind bars for crimes involving firearm theft, vehicle break-ins, and larceny. Upon release, he returned to the family home, where he was welcomed back without public incident. But in less than a week, that home turned into a double homicide scene. Neighbors described hearing loud noises just before police arrived. Inside, officers discovered signs of a violent confrontation. Reports indicated that Daryn had injuries on his hand. No signs of forced entry were present. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was vandalized. Just two members of a family executed inside their own residence. The suspect was arrested without incident. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and is currently being held without bond at Wilson County Jail. The motive remains unknown. The evidence is still being processed. The community is left with questions. Why did a newly released man kill his own mother and teenage brother? Were there warning signs? Could it have been prevented? Welcome to True Crime Unmasked. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more stories. The show where we uncover the disturbing crimes tearing communities apart and the haunting truths hidden behind closed doors. These are real stories, real individuals, real consequences. Stay tuned for more captivating stories. Now, let's begin.
Remains in jail tonight with no bond, charged with murdering his mother and 15-year-old brother. Police say the mother, identified as Dana Jenkins, and the juvenile were found inside a home on Snowden Drive Monday.
Yeah, CBS 17's Daryn James joins us live outside that home tonight. Daryn, you've learned Jenkins was on parole after being released from prison just last week.
Yeah, Angela and Liz. In fact, 1 week ago today, his family tells me, he got out of prison and came here to this house, this duplex, his mom's home, apartment A, where police found the suspect as well as the bodies of his mother and little brother.
Double murder in Wilson County. We're learning the suspect is charged with killing his own brother and his mother. Police identifying the victims as 50-year-old Dana Jenkins and her 15-year-old son, Darren Cox. Jenkins' 25-year-old son, Daryn Jenkins, is now charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The victims were found inside a home yesterday evening on Snowden Drive. Cindy Bay has new reaction from the family.
She was a very sweet person. Always smiled. I can see her smile right now. She always smiled.
Dana Jenkins was a 50-year-old mother and longtime resident of Wilson, North Carolina. Her life was marked by a strong work ethic, spiritual commitment, and dedication to family. She was a regular face at Mount Moriah Community Church, where she participated in church programs and community outreach. Dana's early life details are limited in public records, but community members describe her as dependable, structured, and deeply involved in both her children's upbringing and in supporting others through her faith and employment. Professionally, Dana held consistent work over the years and was known for her sense of responsibility. Her role in the community extended beyond her job, as she frequently volunteered her time in church-led food drives, youth mentoring programs, and neighborhood events. Those who knew her often described her as the foundation of her household and an example of quiet strength. As a parent, Dana was strict but caring. She raised her children with a clear focus on education, discipline, and faith. She reportedly kept close tabs on their schooling, friendships, and behavior. Her commitment to her children was evident through the structure she maintained at home, her constant encouragement of church involvement, and her effort to keep the family unified, even in the face of challenges. Dana's relationship with her oldest son, Daryn Jenkins, was complicated. While she maintained her support for him through his legal troubles, reports suggest there were moments of stress and difficulty. She remained in contact with him during his incarceration, providing emotional and material support. Her decision to allow him to return home after his release reflected both a mother's loyalty and a hope for rehabilitation. Public reaction to Dana's death reflected widespread respect and sorrow. Mount Moriah Community Church held vigils and memorial services in her honor. Community leaders describe her as kind, giving, and dedicated. Online tributes emphasize her strong character, with neighbors and church members posting condolences and sharing memories of her quiet guidance and moral presence. Daryn Cox, Dana's 15-year-old son, was a high school student at Bedingfield High School. Known as a bright and respectful student, Daryn was deeply involved in both academics and extracurricular activities. He was a member of his school's digital media program and had recently shown interest in technical production work. Teachers described him as dependable and curious, someone who was always willing to help others. Outside of school, Daryn played a key role in Mount Moriah Community Church's youth and media ministries. He operated audio/visual equipment during services and participated in youth-led programs. His involvement reflected a sense of maturity and responsibility that stood out to both peers and adults in the congregation. Those who knew him said Daryn had dreams of working in media or communications. He often asked questions about video production and volunteered to help with live stream events and church bulletins. His character was noted for being polite, quiet, and eager to learn. Teachers at Bedingfield High School reported that students and staff were shaken by his death, describing him as a promising young man with a bright future. Daryn's relationship with his mother was close. They attended church together and were often seen running errands or participating in church-related events. He was known to respect household rules and rarely challenge authority. His relationship with Daryn, however, was less clear. Since Daryn had spent years incarcerated, the brothers had limited interaction until Daryn's release. In the days following, some neighbors noticed tension, though no formal reports were made. Dana Jenkins, 25, had a troubled background that included run-ins with the law, unstable behavior, and potential red flags related to his mental health. He grew up in the same household as Dana and Daryn, but his path diverged significantly as he entered his teenage years. School records and anecdotal reports suggest a pattern of behavioral issues during middle and high school, including defiance, poor academic performance, and association with delinquent peers. Family dynamics in the home were reportedly strained during Daryn's adolescence. While Dana attempted to maintain discipline and provide support, Daryn showed resistance to authority. There are no confirmed reports of diagnosed mental illness during his youth, but multiple neighbors and extended family members later noted that he often appeared withdrawn, angry, or disconnected from reality. Daryn's first known legal troubles began in his late teens. Over the years, he was charged with multiple offenses, including the larceny of firearms, breaking and entering, and vehicle-related crimes. His criminal record includes a pattern of theft and property crimes, primarily nonviolent but persistent. By his early 20s, he had been convicted of several felonies. Daryn was released from prison around March 25, 2025. His release conditions have not been publicly disclosed, but no active supervision or parole status has been confirmed by authorities. It is not clear if he had access to any reentry services or counseling during his transition back into society. Upon release, Daryn was welcomed back into his family home by Dana. This decision was viewed with concern by some relatives and neighbors, but Dana reportedly believed he deserved a second chance. She had supported him through his incarceration and remained hopeful about his reintegration. In the 6 days following his return, Daryn was observed behaving erratically. Neighbors noted that he appeared paranoid and withdrawn. He did not engage much with others and often remained inside the home. A family cousin, Juanilla Cornegay, mentioned visible injuries on his hands and signs of emotional instability. Some family members were concerned but did not report the behavior formally. During those days, there was little known interaction between Daryn and Daryn. Sources suggest the two had minimal communication and that tension may have existed, though no outward signs of conflict were reported. Daryn reportedly kept to himself, avoided conversation, and gave vague responses when spoken to. The warning signs were subtle but noticeable. Daryn's emotional detachment, his silence, and visible agitation were seen by some as signs of internal conflict. However, no professional was contacted, and no safety protocols were initiated. In the hours leading up to the crime, nothing unusual had been reported by immediate neighbors or family members. Dana and Darren were believed to be inside their home during the late afternoon. The community was used to the quiet atmosphere of Snowden Drive, and there have been no prior reports of domestic disturbances from the residents in recent days. As the afternoon progressed, neighbors recalled hearing raised voices coming from the Jenkins residence, although no one reported hearing any threats or physical altercations. Some neighbors later stated that they assumed it was a typical family argument. However, shortly after these sounds were noted, around 5:30 p.m., multiple residents heard what they described as several sharp noises resembling gunshots. The sound of gunfire prompted immediate concern, leading to at least one neighbor calling 911. The emergency call reported possible shots fired at the residence, though no one had visual confirmation of who had discharged a weapon or who was involved. The caller reported a disturbance inside the house, but did not mention seeing anyone leave the property. Wilson Police Department officers arrived at the scene within minutes of the emergency call. Upon their arrival, officers secured the perimeter of the home and conducted a swift entry. Inside the residence, they discovered two individuals with fatal injuries, identified as Dana Jenkins and Daryn Cox. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. The initial condition of the bodies raised serious questions about the nature of the attack. Although preliminary observations indicated possible gunshot wounds, there were also early, unconfirmed reports suggesting that the victims might have sustained stab wounds. Authorities did not release official information immediately regarding the exact cause of death, pending autopsy results. Dana's body was located inside the living room area of the home. She appeared to have suffered trauma to the upper body. Darren was found in a separate room, reportedly near or inside a bedroom. His injuries mirrored those of his mother, suggesting a violent confrontation. Crime scene investigators collected several key pieces of evidence. Among the items secured were firearms believed to have been used in the attack and other sharp-edged weapons found inside the home. Additionally, surveillance footage from neighboring properties was reviewed to determine whether any outside activity had been recorded around the time of the incident. One critical detail noted by investigators was that Daryn Jenkins exhibited visible injuries at the time of his arrest. Reports indicated wounds to his hand, which were believed to have occurred during the commission of the crime. These injuries were documented as part of the investigation. Though standard protocol was followed, first responders at the scene reportedly expressed visible shock due to the nature of the crime involving close family members. However, no official statements described their emotional response, as the focus remained on securing the crime scene and collecting evidence. Daryn Jenkins was located and arrested at or near the scene shortly after the bodies were discovered. The precise details of his apprehension indicated that officers detained him without incident. His behavior at the time of arrest was described in reports as calm but uncooperative. There were no signs of resistance or attempt to flee. Following his arrest, Jenkins was booked into the Wilson County Jail. Authorities held him without bond on 2 counts of first-degree murder. His initial booking records confirmed his identity, prior criminal history, and recent release from state prison. The Wilson County Jail officially recorded his status as a high-risk inmate pending trial. Law enforcement agencies released a brief official statement the same evening, confirming the deaths of Dana Jenkins and Darren Cox and announcing the arrest of Daryn Jenkins. The statement emphasized that the investigation was ongoing and that no further details would be provided until more information became available. They urged the community to remain calm and allow the investigation to proceed. Family members and neighbors reacted with a mixture of disbelief and grief. Some expressed shock, stating that while Jenkins had a known criminal past, no one expected such a violent outcome so soon after his release. Neighbors who spoke to local media described Dana and Darren as respected members of the community and highlighted their active roles in the local church. Early media coverage focused heavily on the background of Daryn Jenkins, particularly his recent release from prison and the violent nature of the crime. News outlets reported extensively on the prior convictions of Jenkins and questioned how a man with his record had been released. The public reaction was immediate, with widespread coverage in local and national news drawing attention to issues of parole, reentry support, and family safety. The case drew swift public attention as one of the most shocking incidents in Wilson in recent years. Journalists reported on community vigils, statements from local leaders, and the police department's efforts to reassure residents. Meanwhile, the investigation into the motive and exact sequence of events continued under tight security, with forensic analysis pending and autopsy reports expected to shed light on the full scope of the violence that occurred inside the Jenkins home. The days following the double homicide were marked by a visible outpouring of grief across Wilson. Vigils were held in several locations, including outside the family's residence and at Mount Moriah Community Church, where both Dana and Darren were active members. Neighbors, church congregants, classmates, and strangers gathered with candles, flowers, and personal tributes, transforming the scenes into memorials of shared loss. Church members remembered Dana for her consistent involvement in community outreach and youth mentorship. Darren, known for participation in the church's media and youth ministries, was remembered fondly by friends and classmates. Students from Bedingfield High School, where Darren was enrolled, shared stories of his kindness and involvement in school activities. In response to the emotional impact on students, Bedingfield High School provided on-site counseling services. Counselors facilitated group discussions, grief workshops, and private sessions for those directly affected. The Wilson County School District emphasized the importance of mental health support during this period, encouraging students to seek help without stigma. Mount Moriah Community Church played a central role in the community's processing of the tragedy. In the Sundays following the incident, church leadership delivered sermons focused on themes of loss, forgiveness, and understanding amid grief. Bishop Sherman Blandon addressed the congregation directly, acknowledging the community's pain while emphasizing the importance of unity and faith during such times. Beyond the church walls, public discourse in Wilson expanded to broader discussions on topics like forgiveness, anger, and mental health awareness. The case prompted conversations about how communities support both victims and perpetrators' families in the aftermath of violent crimes. Residents expressed mixed emotions, grappling with the horror of the event while reflecting on systemic issues like post-incarceration mental health care and family reintegration. Community leaders call for increased awareness of warning signs related to mental health crises, particularly among individuals recently released from incarceration. Although discussions were often framed within the context of moral responsibility, there was a recurring call for systemic changes that could help prevent similar tragedies. The joint funeral service for Dana Jenkins and Darren Cox was held on April 13, 2025, at Mount Moriah Community Church. The service drew a large turnout from the Wilson community, including church members, school representatives, friends, neighbors, and extended family. Attendees filled the sanctuary and overflowed into adjoining areas. Several notable eulogies were delivered during the service. Church elders spoke of Dana's lifelong dedication to service and her unwavering support for the church's youth programs. Darren's youth pastor described him as a respectful, bright teenager with a promising future. Friends from school shared brief remarks, reflecting on Darren's character and the deep void his absence would leave. While some family members chose to speak publicly, others remained silent, visibly overcome by grief. The service concluded with a moment of silence, followed by a community meal in the church hall, a somber gathering that provided space for collective mourning. Following his arrest on the night of March 31st, Daryn Jenkins was formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The charges stemmed from the deaths of his mother and brother inside their shared home. Jenkins was immediately remanded to the Wilson County Jail and ordered to be held without bond, pending further legal proceedings. His first court appearance occurred on April 1st, 2025. During the brief hearing, Jenkins appeared before a district court judge, where the charges were read and the no-bond decision was upheld. The court set preliminary dates for further hearings, signaling the start of a lengthy legal process. No plea was entered at this initial appearance, and Jenkins was assigned a public defender pending further investigation. The investigation into the deaths of Dana Jenkins and Darren Cox continued actively after Jenkins' arrest. Forensic teams processed a crime scene on Snowden Drive, collecting physical evidence, including potential murder weapons and trace materials. Investigators examined the victim's wounds, seeking to determine the exact cause and manner of death, though official details remain under review. Law enforcement also collected digital evidence, Investigators retrieved Jenkins' cell phone, analyzing text messages, call logs, and internet history for any indications of premeditation or motive. Social media activity was reviewed, though no immediate evidence of threats or confessions was made public. Interviews with family members, neighbors, and church acquaintances formed another critical component of the investigation. Witnesses provided statements regarding Jenkins' behavior following his release from prison, noting instances of erratic conduct and possible warning signs of instability. Surviving family members offered context on Jenkins' relationship with his mother and brother, providing insight into potential family dynamics leading up to the crime. Authorities confirmed that all information gathered would be presented to the district attorney for use in building the state's case against Jenkins. As the legal process advanced, both the defense and prosecution began formulating their strategies. The defense, represented by a court-appointed public defender, considered the possibility of pursuing a mental health-based offense. Discussions focused on Jenkins' mental state at the time of the crime, his adjustment post-incarceration, and any potential history of psychological trauma or undiagnosed mental illness. The prosecution maintained a firm stance on the charges, citing the severity of the crime, the familial relationship between the victims and the accused, and the perceived intentional nature of the act. Prosecutors prepared to argue that Jenkins acted with premeditation and that the evidence would demonstrate clear motive and intent. Legal observers speculated on the likelihood of a competency evaluation, given the nature of the charges and the defense's potential interest in exploring Jenkins' mental health status. The court had not yet ordered such an evaluation publicly, though discussions were reported to be ongoing between legal counsel. At this stage, Jenkins remained represented by a public defender, with no private attorney engaged. The case was expected to proceed through preliminary hearings before moving to a formal trial date, pending evidence review and pretrial motions. If this story touched you deeply and made you question what's real, be sure to tap the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more gripping true crime stories that unravel the hidden truths behind heartbreaking cases, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest episodes, investigations, and powerful conversations. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth and fight for justice. Together, we can shine a light where it's needed most. Stay safe, stay alert, and we'll see you in the next story.